1992's Batman Returns is Tim Burton's second film contribution to the Batman series, and it would ultimately be his last due to the producers at Warner Brothers and some parents at the time feeling like the film was too violent and too dark in tone. Batman Returns is one of Tim Burton's most personal films, and his unique contributions to the reinvention of the Penguin helped to create arguably the best version of the character through any Batman medium. Furthermore, Batman Returns' version of Catwoman, which is played impeccably by Michelle Pfeiffer, is my favorite iteration of the character. This film, just like its predecessor, 1989's Batman, has some of the best performances in comic book movie history, and this is not only primarily due to the actors and actresses' contributions, but also due to the great dialogue from the screenplay that is written by Daniel Waters. This, combined with a decent story by Batman 1989's screenwriter Sam Hamm and Tim Burton's unique artistic contributions, make Batman Returns such a novel and at times esoteric story within the Batman series. This film definitely has fantasy elements inherent in it, with evident inspirations drawn from the German Expressionism film movement, which is even more evident here than in its predecessor, Batman 1989. Danny DeVito was born to play the role of the Penguin, and he absolutely knocks it out the park with his insane, creepy, and at times comical performance. Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman is the best version of Catwoman ever, and she was perfectly cast for the role because there was something about her nature, her voice, her eyes, the way she moves that screams Catwoman. Michael Keaton returns as Batman and Bruce Wayne, and he continues to play the character with conviction and this conflicted and tormented undertone that dwells within the character. There is more Bruce Wayne in this film than in Batman 1989, and we get to see how he conducts himself in the business world. This version of Batman is wise and experienced, and it is a pleasure to watch Michael Keaton play this role with such confidence. Danny Elfman's score is the best Batman score in existence out of the entire franchise, and it expands more on what he brought in the first Tim Burton film. This film score is a symphonic film score that can only be considered a masterpiece. The themes are rich and powerful, and it's one of those scores that when you hear it, you know exactly which scene it is juxtaposed with. Also, the art direction by Tom Duffield and Rick Henreich is the best out of this whole series, as well as the production design by Bo Welch. The opening of this film feels like a dark and gloomy fairy tale, where at its heart is a story of a pain universal, a story of abandonment. Tim Burton does an excellent job with his compositions and camera work, and with the art direction and set design and Danny Elfman's score, this makes the Penguin's birth and abandonment by his parents feel like something almost mythological, a dark urban fairy tale. Now, I just want to speak briefly about the 4K transfer. I think it's beautiful. The colors are rich. The sharpness is nice and crisp. The sound is excellent. This movie feels like it just came out today, and they did an impeccable job with the 4K transfer. Now, another fascinating thing about this movie is that it's a Christmas movie juxtaposed with dark themes, similar to what Tim Burton did with A Nightmare Before Christmas. It's a social commentary about the darkness and the sadness that lurks under the pretense of jolliness and merriment. This is also seen in how the penguin comes from a privileged background, but due to his abandonment by his parents, lives among the most undesirables of society due to his disfigurement. This is a film about trauma and being marginalized by society. This is also seen in Catwoman, where Selena Kyle is pushed around and belittled because she is an introverted and perceived as weak. And when she is thrown out the window by Max Schreck after she accesses his hidden files and discovered that he was going to illegally stockpile energy to make profits off of Gotham citizens in the future, and essentially she was only trying to do her job and she gets thrown out the window, she uses this trauma to reinvent herself into the antithesis of what she initially was. Just like the Penguin. When Selena is reinvented as Catwoman, she goes from being a weak pushover to a confident and deadly femme fatale. When she says to Max, "How can you be so mean to somebody so meaningless?" it says a lot about how she views herself as worthless. This really makes me empathize with the character a lot. Now, in regards to some negative criticisms I have for this film, I think that they took some of the fantasy elements too far by having Oswald being discovered by penguins. I can't suspend my disbelief to that degree. I know he possibly drifted to the abandoned zoo, but we don't see any of the Red Triangle gang, only penguins, and it kind of infers he was discovered or raised by penguins, which is too far fetched for me. The issue with the penguins comes up later in the film, too, only it's much worse in the third act. Max Schreck, which is played by Christopher Walken, is trying to stockpile energy for future profits. Now, Christopher Walken does a decent job, but he essentially plays himself, and I'm a little indifferent to his performance. Now, I thought it was hilarious how he improved his speech to the most generic nonsense about handing out peace and love wrapped in a big bow. I love how the penguin concurs eerily in the sewer. "Oh, but you will. Oh, but you will." The Red Triangle Gang attacks during Max's speech, and this is just a great way to display the outstanding costumes and art direction. It's just amazing. And I love how Bruce Wayne is just sitting alone in solitude in the darkness, waiting for the bat signal when Jim Gordon lights it up. It's as if Bruce Wayne has nothing to live for except being Batman. I love that. It shows that ultimately Bruce Wayne's true persona, his true self, is Batman, and that Bruce Wayne is actually the mask. When Batman arrives in the Batmobile to attack the Red Triangle Circus Gang, there is some great action. I think the scene where he lights up the fire breathing clown with the exhaust of the Batmobile and sets him on fire is the most badass thing Batman has ever done on film. Period. I have no reservations about Batman killing the bad guys because The Dark Knight Returns is my favorite Batman comic, and in that story, Batman is an old man and he gets fed up with the criminality in Gotham and begins to take revenge and kill his enemies. Now, when the Penguin kidnaps Max, there are some hilarious moments filled with great dialogue and great acting from Danny DeVito. I love the line when Max sees him for the first time and he's horrified, he's speechless, and then the Penguin says, "I believe the word you're looking for is ah!" That one always makes me laugh my ass off. And then Max replies in horror, "The Penguin Man of the Sewer." It shows that the Penguin has become an urban legend. The way the penguin spits when he talks and makes those penguin noises, it's so creepy and shows such great ambition from Danny DeVito's dedicated performance. He truly embodies the character, and when he tries to blackmail Max into helping him be accepted in society with the documents and toxic waste that he finds, it makes for some hilarious and great dialogue. I love when he pulls out Max's missing colleague's hand and says, "You flush it, I flaunt it." Now, Christopher Walken is great when he's questioning Selena Kyle about how she opened the protected files. He is very menacing, and they make Catwoman's origin very fantasy like here. And they give it this spiritual dimension or magical dimension of almost making her possessed by the spirit of alley cats, to the point that it even gives her 9 lives where she can endure bullet wounds and serious injuries that would kill her. Once Michelle Pfeiffer has her psychological breakdown, it's powerful, it's disturbing, it's unpleasant, and as far as her acting goes, it's remarkable. Danny Elfman's music is so powerful for this scene, your heart breaks for Selena Kyle. She finally has a mental breakdown from hating that feeling of being worthless and pushed over and undermined and overlooked by society and perceived as a weakling. And I think we can all relate to her, and especially how she just wants to destroy that which she once was when she destroys all her cute looking belongings, which are all the things that just project on the surface level that you are quote unquote normal and happy, when in truth you are anything but. I love how she breaks her neon sign in her apartment and changes it from hello there to hell here. Now, using the penguin to rescue the mayor's infant son is a good idea to get him into the good graces of society, but the way it's executed was haphazard and lazy. Even with the suspension of disbelief, just having the penguin rise up in his giant rubber ducky platform like that was silly and poorly executed. Any person with half a brain would realize that this is entirely staged. Now, besides the issues with the penguins and how they are used in this film, another primary problem that I have with this film is that the citizens of Gotham are depicted in the most stupid manner. And it comes across like they are almost Springfield citizens from The Simpsons, which I will elaborate on much more later. Now, this scene would have worked better if they had tried to make it more realistic. Maybe have the kidnapper steal the mayor's baby, and as he's running, he trips and falls into an open sewer, and the penguin's there, and he's able to apprehend him and get the kidnapper and basically rescue the baby. Now, when the penguin visits his parents' grave and he pretends to be sentimental, he gives a Shakespearean performance, and it almost comes across as if it were inspired by a silent film. Now, like I stated earlier, the Gotham citizens are depicted as complete dumbasses in this movie, and it's maddening. You almost want the penguin to kill all of them because they are so stupid, and you feel like people this idiotic shouldn't be made to live. This is really bad because I want to feel like Gotham citizens are worth saving, but their idiocy is just displayed in a ridiculous manner. Their idiocy is displayed just in how they react to everything. Every single line they utter just portrays them like airheads, and their reactions to things, such as the penguin's monstrosity and his disgusting behaviors, is just to have stupid smiles on their faces. Perhaps Tim Burton was trying to show that society has gotten to the point of accepting such levels of stupidity that the average person is a dumbass, making us empathize with the villains. But I think he went too far if that is the likelihood, because the citizens of Gotham's idiocy is way too cartoonish and buffoonish for me. Now, I love Catwoman's first appearance when she attacks the mugger that tries to rob that woman, and how she uses his face for tic tac toe with his claws. I love how she turns on the defenseless woman that she just rescued only to admonish her for being a damsel in distress. This shows a woman reborn with confidence and empowerment, yet we still see a hint of her madness and vulnerability. I also love seeing the Penguin lost in thought, obsessed with his revenge on Gotham's firstborn children, a plot point that hasn't been revealed to the audience yet. Now, again, we see the citizens of Gotham looking stupid when they have no reaction to the Penguin's disgusting eating habits when he announces himself running for mayor. I, however, do love the dialogue here, such as "I like to fill her void," and when he bites that one guy's nose off and says, "It could be worse, my nose could be gushing blood." That was so brutal and dark, and it's no wonder why parents were upset when this film was released. But I love Batman being dark like this, it's amazing. Now, I love when Catwoman reveals herself to Batman and the Penguin when she blows up Max's shop and does all those cartwheels and she simply says meow to their stunned reactions, and then a huge explosion occurs behind her. Now, Catwoman and Batman have great chemistry. It's outstanding. Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Keaton were born for their roles, and the chemistry between them comes across as very erotic and sexual, but in a nuanced way. And they truly both capture the embodiment of two people with dual identities who've possibly found refuge in one another. Bruce Wayne and Selena Kyle have an equal amount of chemistry as they do as Catwoman and Batman. Now, Catwoman and the Penguin team up in a scheme to paint Batman like themselves, which is basically the perception of them as criminal freaks. To do this, they kidnap Gotham's beauty queen, and the Penguin kills her without Catwoman's awareness of this, and basically they frame Batman for her murder, transforming him into what he hates. The way Catwoman acts like a real cat, licking herself and eating the bird, it's very freakishly bizarre. This is a film where the villains act like animals, are named after animals, and the protagonist is also named after an animal as well, and the final showdown takes place in a zoo. It's like Gotham City is a human zoo. Now, another major criticism I have for this film is when Commissioner Gordon starts showing murder evidence on television, which is stupid. Someone should have told him that if he did that, the evidence becomes inadmissible in court. This was just ridiculous, and there's no excuse for this bad writing decision right here. Now, when Batman is framed for killing the beauty queen, there are some amazing visuals, like when he uses the glider to fly off the building and escape from the police, and all the bats are flying around the Christmas tree in Gotham Square. This film has beautiful aesthetics, and it looks like something taken from the pages of the Long Halloween graphic novel or something. I think this is the best looking Batman film as far as feeling like it was directly inspired from the comic books. Gotham City looks like Fritz Lang's Metropolis. Now comes the scene where the Penguin hijacks the Batmobile, which I thought was thrilling, humorous, but executed a little silly right here. Now, I love when Batman transforms his car into a missile, but the fact that the Penguin uses a little carousel ride that looks like the Batmobile is a little too much as far as silliness goes. Now, Batman records the Penguin's contemptuous remarks about Gotham's citizens and uses it to destroy his mayoral campaign when he plays it out loud for everyone to hear. Now, once the Penguin gives up trying to conform to society by running for mayor because Batman played the recording of him talking negatively about Gotham citizens, he goes back to the only life he ever knew, which is the life of an undesirable. Now, he says some great dialogue right here that just shows how much he's just given up on this notion of being accepted by society, and he's accepted himself as this monster. He says, "I am not a human being. I am an animal, cold-blooded." And then he says one of the funniest things in the entire film, "Crank the AC." Now, It turns out that the Penguin's plan all along was that he's going to murder all the firstborn children of Gotham as revenge for what his parents did to him and how society looks down on him. The Penguin kills anyone that tries to question him. And this was a great scene that just showed his madness when his little henchman says, "Isn't that a little?" He goes, "Taking kids, isn't that a little?" And then the Penguin just shoots him in cold blood and says, "No, it's a lot." This is some pretty dark stuff we're talking about here, and it's no wonder why parent groups were very, very upset by this film because we're talking about a child murderer. And we're not talking about just one person, kid being murdered, or a couple of kids being murdered. We're talking all the firstborn children of Gotham. This is almost genocide that the Penguin is talking about here. Now, at Max's party, Selina reveals to Bruce Wayne that she is willing to kill Max by bringing a gun and planning to assassinate him, illustrating her struggle with being good. Now, if she crosses that line, she will become just as bad as her enemies. She also shows that she is on the brink of insanity, and that little poem about mistletoe that she shared with Batman as Catwoman shows Bruce that she is indeed Catwoman, and now they know each other's true identities. When the Penguin crashes the party in his giant rubber ducky, there's some pretty impressive stunt work for that explosion, and you see all these bodies flying. Here, the Penguin kidnaps Max and announces to high society that he is going to kidnap all their firstborn children. This is the beginning of the third act and where the film has its most problems due to some execution of plot elements that are pretty ridiculous. And because they also come across excessively cartoonish. And I'm primarily speaking about the mind controlled penguins with the rockets. It's silly. And it's the main thing I don't like about this movie, besides how Gotham citizens are portrayed as idiots. This comes across as cartoonish and absurd. Where did the Penguin come with this technology? Where did he come up with it? Does he have some kind of scientist in the Red Triangle clown gang? And also, the way the Penguin's henchmen, the Red Triangle gang, roll through town in this giant toy choo choo train to kidnap the children. It's so absurd. You would think that the police would be able to easily identify the Red Triangle gang in that silly choo choo train, especially after the Penguin declared to all of high society that he was going to kidnap their children. Wouldn't the police be on high alert and on the lookout for the Red Triangle circus gang? It's like they took the minor things that I didn't like about Batman 1989, things that I thought came across too cartoonish, and just made it three times as worse. And again, I'm talking about the cartoonish aspects of the plot. Don't get me wrong, I love the aesthetics of this film, but you have to give the aesthetics a credible reason for existing, especially for an adult driven film like this. Also, when the Penguin is giving a speech to the Penguins, it illustrates his madness, but at the same time, they actually are able to listen to him and acknowledge his commands that are spoken in English, which is ridiculous. However, the third act, while having some significant issues, also has its unquestionable epic moments that I love. Seeing the Batboat in action was awesome, and seeing Alfred and Batman ruin the Penguin's scheme to destroy Gotham with the mind controlled Penguins with their rockets was great, especially the Penguin's upset reaction. Finally, the final fight that takes place at the abandoned zoo was outstanding. Batman is able to tap into the frequency that the penguin was using to manipulate the penguins and have them fire on the penguin's base, which causes the penguin to fall into Max's toxic waste and die. However, the real highlight of the third act is when Catwoman finally kills Max Shrek and Batman pleads for her not to kill Max and to join him. It's very touching, And Michelle Pfeiffer's performance in this specific scene is incredible. I love how her costume is all torn and falling apart, just like her psyche and sanity. And there was a moment when you felt like Bruce Wayne and Selena Kyle could truly be together and that they were made for one another. Both have the same split right down the middle of their personalities. Batman pleads with her to such an extent that he even reveals that he is really Bruce Wayne. Now, the way Catwoman kills Max is pretty intense, brutal, and crazy. It's a brutal way for him to die and for her to even go through that painful experience of being basically cooked alive, even though she has 9 lives and will survive. Still, that minor sacrifice, or that temporary sacrifice rather, had to be brutally painful. Now, when the penguins drag the penguin's dead body, it looks stupid and fake, and this is something that has always bothered me. However, I do love the final moments of this film. I love that final shot of Catwoman looking at the bat signal as the snow falls on Gotham City. It's beautiful and looks like the comic book brought to life. It is such an excellent way to end the movie, and Danny Elfman's score just makes it feel epic and beautiful and magical. Tim Burton's Batman Returns is a flawed film, but I still highly recommend it. It's flawed, but it has such epic moments and such outstanding performances that it's easy to forgive the film. I highly recommend it, especially if you're a Batman fan. Thank you guys for listening to this review and analysis. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and share. And last but not least, one love, people. Take care.